The fact that the Qur'an came down to an illiterate, could neither read nor write person is a proof.
He was illiterate isn't a historical fact we can verify. It's a claim coming from the same tradition that's already convinced he's a prophet and the Qur'an is divine. So we're basically using belief to prove belief. But even if I grant it, so what? Illiterate doesn't mean stupid. It doesn't mean unconscious. It doesn't mean he was kept in a soundproof box. This was 7th century Arabia, a powerhouse oral culture. People memorized epic poems, long family trees, entire stories for fun. Not being able to read doesn't turn your brain off. The idea that Muhammad lived in total isolation is just not realistic. He lived around poets, traders, Jews, Christians, storytellers. He traveled, listened, and debated. And the biggest issue, none of this is verifiable. We can't check private conversations, learning, or influences from 7th century Arabia. So calling this a proof is basically trust me, bro, but religious.
But if you ask if there is scientific info, there are many. We've already mentioned these in previous past videos. The Quran mentions about astronomy, anatomy, biology, and embryology. So yes, the Quran contains many signs and proofs for new inventions.
If one verse happens to line up with modern science, that's not a miracle, that's chance. Especially in a book that talks constantly about the sky, the body, animals, and reproduction. If I write hundreds of poetic lines about nature, odds are one of them will age well. If the Quran really had divine knowledge, we'd expect clear, consistent descriptions that stand on their own, not vague lines that only become scientific after modern discoveries force reinterpretation. Read it as a whole. It doesn't read like a science textbook. It reads like a 7th century guy trying to describe nature with what he knew. Because that's what it is. Let's just take astronomy. And we made the sky a protected ceiling, but they, from its signs, are turning away. It is he who has made the earth a bed for you and the sky a canopy. And it is he who sends down rain from above for the growth of every kind of food products for your sustenance. So, when you know this, you should not set up equals to rank with Allah. Do you not see that Allah has subjected to you whatever is on the earth and the ships which run through the sea by his command? He could have mentioned the idea of air or orbit here somehow. And he restrains the sky from falling upon the earth unless by his permission. Indeed, Allah to the people is kind and merciful. Or you make the heaven fall upon us in fragments as you have claimed, or you bring Allah and the angels before us. Have they not looked at the heaven above them, how we structured it and adorned it and how it has no rifts? And mention the day when the heaven will split open with emerging clouds and the angels will be sent down in successive descent. If you're honest, this isn't divine foresight. This is an ancient guy writing down what he saw, a big blue dome-like thing above him, and calling it holy.
Can you give an example of scientific miracles? We can find numerous examples that astound people. For example, Surah Ad-Dhariyat, verse 47. وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ. And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expander. The expansion of the universe wasn't known at that time. In contradiction, it was believed to be static, even in Newton's time. The expansion of the universe was discovered in 1929 with the Hubble telescope. The fact that the Quran mentioned it 14 centuries ago proves that a human couldn't have had such knowledge. Only Allah, who has sovereignty of the universe and knowledge that it's expanding, can make such a statement. We can easily see the Quran is true with this scientific sign.
Of course it's this verse. Every time, this is the crown jewel of Quranic science apologetics, the one they say for special occasions. And it's also the miracle that absolutely nobody noticed for over 1,000 years. Not a single Muslim interpreter, translator, scientist, scholar, or commentator understood this verse as cosmic expansion before 1929. Not one. Zero. Everyone understood it as a statement about God's power and vastness. That's the best you've got? After all the buildup, this is the miracle we're supposed to be astounded by?
Some argue against the scientific miracles in the Quran, and there are those who say that you forcefully make these conversations.
Also, they claim expansion in this verse is referred to the breadth of Allah's mercy and power. What's your thoughts?
To say this is to ignore dozens of evidences. In fact, there are dozens of examples of verses like this.
Great, name one verse, or even one hadith, from the Prophet himself or from any of his 120,000 friends.
Not just this verse. Is each verse being declared by coercion? We say it with Arabic grammar. I can already find the meaning in the Arabic language. أوسع, its root word. وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُؤْسِئُونَ. Mu'si'un word, أوسع, comes from this root. The meaning is broad, but there's something unknown. The verses' layers in meaning are unknown. The Quran verses have a wide range of meanings. There's an apparent, clear meaning and disclosed, explained meanings. So what we do is, in addition to the apparent meaning, it's point to different times where new meanings can be detracted. It may seem as a meaning making by force if a person doesn't understand the disclosed meanings, along with the apparent meaning at the time. The Quran's meaning layer is extremely broad, demonstrating the Quran is timeless.
If a verse requires post-1929 cosmology, then it's not timeless, it's useless. But notice what's happening here. The claim quietly shifts from the Quran clearly states a scientific fact to the meaning is broad, unknown, layered, disclosed, hidden, apparent, and only fully understood later. At this point, I honestly don't care if a verse has 10 meanings. That alone kills the miracle. If the universe is expanding, wow, miracle. If it's not expanding, no problem, it actually meant something else. Very convenient when the verse's meaning depends on the century you're in.
You answered well, but I didn't get my answer. I mentioned the breadth issue.
Yes, the issue of breadth also falls within the scope of this verse. When the meaning is analyzed, it may have indicated that the universe expanded in the meaning for this period. So a person can accept both the expansion of Allah's power and the universe expansion at the same time.
At this point, we've fully entered unfalsifiable territory. Real scientific statements actually take risks. They tell you how the world is, not how it might be reinterpreted later once humans figure things out. When a verse is allowed to mean both the universe expands and the universe doesn't expand, then the miracle isn't in the Quran anymore. It's in how flexible the interpretation has become.
As we have mentioned, in this verse, Allah may have meant both the apparent meaning and the hidden meaning. Those who say you deduce meanings by force are those who are unaware that the verses have such a broad scope and that there are multiple layers of meaning.
Groups labeled as heretical, especially esoteric sects like certain Shia and Batini movements, relied heavily on the claim that verses have secret inner meanings that only become clear later or only to special people. Sunni scholarship spent centuries pushing back against this exact method because it opens the door to reading anything into the text. Once you say a verse has a hidden meaning that overrides or escapes the apparent meaning, you've lost control of interpretation. Anyone can smuggle in whatever belief they want and call it divine depth. The same methodology once used to dismiss deviant interpretations is now being used to defend modern scientific miracles. The only difference is the goal. Back then, it was theology. Today, it's cosmology.
The editor is asking a question. Should I read it?
Doesn't matter.
Here.
Weren't the two Muslims pretending to be skeptics not skeptical enough already? This is just a normal question. It didn't need the dramatic paper pass. It could have been asked directly.
Some argue the miracles in the Quran were known in the Sumerian times, period. Do you have anything to say? This is a frequently asked question. Firstly, I didn't confirm the authenticity of this info, so I don't know if there's any evidence, but it won't matter even if it was.
It won't matter even if the ideas were already floating around in Sumerian times, is interesting standard. But you're right, it actually doesn't matter. What matters is whether the Quran consistently describes reality with clear, consistent, ahead of its time accuracy, unlike any other ancient book. And that's exactly where everything collapses. So let's talk about the big picture again. Muslims will happily say the Bible is full of scientific errors. And even when Christians perform interpretive backflips to explain them away, everyone can still feel it. The overall vibe of those texts is primitive, just ancient people guessing how the world works. Now imagine this scenario. You're forced to give a lecture on quantum physics to a room full of people who know absolutely nothing about it. Most of what you say will be educated guessing at best. You'll say what sounds reasonable, not what's actually true. Then imagine a real physicist standing up mid-lecture and starts correcting you, exposing mistake after mistake. What do? You backpedal. That's not what I meant. I was speaking metaphorically. You misunderstood the context. And so on. Even if you patch every hole, did you convince the physicist you're an expert? No. Because an expert wouldn't have been vague and wrong in the first place. They'd be clear, precise, and actually helpful. And that's exactly the problem here. Those Quranic verses we read earlier don't sound like advanced knowledge of the universe. They sound like desert sky poetry. A solid A+ for 7th century imagination, but nothing more. Big sky above, flat earth below, heaven like a roof, stars as decorations. Notice what's missing. Completely missing. No clear statement that the earth is spherical, the earth rotates on its axis, the earth orbits the sun, the moon orbits the earth. The sun is over 1,000,000 times larger than earth. These aren't modern philosophical opinions. These are basic cosmic facts. If this book came from the creator of the universe, this would have been the easiest flex imaginable. Instead, we get language that fits perfectly with 7th century understanding, which raises a very uncomfortable question. Why does a supposedly divine book sound exactly like a human product of its time? The best apologetic answer is this.
The point I'm making is that the cosmological picture in the Quran is one which can be in line with 7th century Arabian, unscientific, if you want to call it the unscientific understanding, but it can actually also be, and this is one of the arguments, another argument, it can actually also be in line with 21st century understandings of science.
Sure, it's not wrong. It's just compatible with being wrong. It's compatible with ancient misunderstanding and modern understanding. The simplest answer, and less magical, is usually the right one. These books read this way because they were written by human beings, limited by the knowledge of their age, and no amount of dramatic paper passing is going to change that.